Why is this door locked? Lena didn't mean to sound accusatory, but the words came out sharp, echoing down the narrow hallway of her new home. She stood at the end of the corridor, hand still on the cold brass doorknob, the third box of her belongings abandoned at her feet. Grace appeared at the top of the stairs so quietly that Lena flinched. Her landlady moved like smoke, dark hair loose around her shoulders, gray eyes unreadable in the dim afternoon light filtering through the lace curtains. Every old house has its quirks. Grace's voice was silk over steel as she descended, each step deliberate. That room isn't part of your rental. You didn't mention a locked room when I signed the lease. You didn't ask. Grace reached the bottom step, close enough now that Lena could smell her perfume, something like jasmine and old books. Does it matter? It shouldn't have. Lena had rented this house to disappear, to escape the wreckage of her life 2 cities away. A locked room should have been the least of her concerns. But something about the way Grace positioned herself between Lena and the door, the way her fingers trembled slightly before she clasped them together, it made Lena's curiosity burn hotter. What's inside? Memories. Grace stepped closer, reaching past Lena's shoulder to touch the door. Her arm brushed Lena's collarbone, and the contact sent electricity down Lena's spine. Old furniture. Letters. Things that should stay buried. Before I tell you what happened, subscribe to Sapphic Whispers and comment where you're watching from. Grace's hand lingered on the doorknob, and Lena noticed how white her knuckles had gone. This wasn't just about privacy or boundaries. This was fear. I'm sorry, Lena said, softer now. I wasn't trying to intrude. I heard something. Grace's eyes snapped to hers. Heard what? Nothing. I mean, Lena felt foolish suddenly. Probably just the house settling. Old pipes or whatever. But it hadn't sounded like pipes. It had sounded like whispers. Like fabric rustling. Like someone breathing on the other side of the wood. Grace's expression shifted, something like recognition crossing her features before she masked it. She withdrew her hand from the door, but not before Lena saw her touch her collarbone. A nervous gesture, fingers pressing against the hollow of her throat. The house is old, Grace said, backing away. It makes noise. You'll get used to it. She turned to leave, but Lena caught her wrist. The contact was electric, inappropriate, too intimate for 2 women who'd only met 3 days ago during the lease signing. Grace froze, her pulse visible and rapid beneath Lena's fingers. I won't ask again, Lena said. About the room. Grace's lips parted, and for a moment, Lena thought she saw something crack in that careful composure, longing, maybe, or loneliness. Then Grace pulled away, smoothing her expression back into place. Thank you. She climbed the stairs to her own apartment, but at the landing, she paused. Lena? Yes. Some rooms are locked for a reason. Not to keep you out. Grace's voice dropped to almost a whisper. But to keep something else in. She disappeared upstairs, leaving Lena alone in the hallway with her boxes and questions. The house creaked around her. Dust motes danced in the dying light. And when Lena bent to pick up her belongings, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Scratch marks. Deep grooves in the door frame, splintered wood that looked fresh despite the house's age. Scratches that could only have come from inside the locked room. From someone or something trying desperately to get out. If you do the same thing, subscribe to Sapphic Whispers and tell me where you're watching from. The scratches haunted Lena for a week. She tried to ignore them, tried to focus on unpacking, on building her new quiet life. But every time she walked past that door, which was constantly, since it stood between her bedroom and the bathroom, she felt its pull. And every evening, when Grace came down with tea and those careful smiles, Lena found herself pulled toward something else entirely. You take it with honey, right? Grace set the cup on Lena's kitchen table, her fingers lingering near Lena's hand. You remembered. I remember everything about you. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. They'd fallen into this routine, tea at 9, conversation until midnight, an intimacy that felt both natural and dangerous. Grace would sit close enough that their knees touched. Lena would find excuses to brush Grace's hair back from her face. Neither acknowledged what was building between them, but it charged the air like an approaching storm. Tonight, though, Lena had other intentions. "I found something," she said, pulling out her laptop. "About the house." Grace's hand went immediately to her collarbone. Lying tell. Lena had learned to watch for it. "What did you find?" Lena turned the screen to show a digitized newspaper article from 1952. The headline read, "Tragedy at the Morrison House. 2 women found dead in apparent suicide pact." Grace's face went pale. "Where did you get this?" "The Historical Society archives." It wasn't hard. Lena watched Grace's reaction carefully. Catherine Morrison and Elena Vasquez. They died in this house. In that locked room. Stop. They were lovers, Grace. The article tries to hide it behind devoted friends and inexplicable tragedy, but I can read between the lines. They loved each other when the world wouldn't let them, and they... I said stop. Grace stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Her chest heaved, eyes bright with tears. "You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell me. Explain why you keep that room locked. Why you look at me the way you do, like you're terrified and desperate at the same time. Why?" Grace kissed her. It was desperate, almost violent. Grace's hands fisting in Lena's shirt, pulling her up from the chair and against the wall beside the locked door. Lena gasped against Grace's mouth, her mind reeling even as her body responded, hands sliding into Grace's hair, tilting her head for better access. This wasn't gentle exploration. This was drowning and gasping for air. This was months of loneliness and years of wanting compressed into one desperate moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Grace pressed her forehead against Lena's. "Catherine was my grandmother," she whispered. Lena's world tilted. "What?" "Catherine Morrison. She was my father's mother." "And Elena?" Grace's voice cracked. "Elena was the love of her life. They couldn't be together openly. This house was their sanctuary. That room was where they could be themselves." "Grace." "They made a pact. Die together rather than live apart in a world that would never accept them. Pills and wine," the article said. "Bodies intertwined, wearing each other's clothes." Grace pulled back, her gray eyes searching Lena's face. "My grandmother left me this house. Made me promise to keep that room locked. To never let anyone open it." "Why?" "Because loving like that destroyed them." Grace's thumb traced Lena's lower lip. "And I see us heading there. The way I can't stop thinking about you. The way I'd burn my whole life down just to..." She stopped herself, stepping back. But Lena saw the truth written all over her face. This wasn't just attraction. This was obsession brewing. Dangerous and intoxicating, and exactly what Lena had been running from. The intensity, the all-consuming need that had destroyed her last relationship. Except this time, she wanted to run toward it instead of away. "You're wearing a key," Lena said quietly. "Around your neck. Under your shirt." Grace's hand flew to her collarbone again, covering the chain. "Lena, don't. You've been lying. You have access to that room. You go in there, don't you?" The silence was answer enough. Something snapped in Lena then, hurt and betrayal and desperate curiosity. She lunged forward, reaching for the chain, and Grace twisted away, but not fast enough. The necklace broke, the silver key falling to the floor between them with a small, terrible sound. They both stared at it. "You want to know what's inside?" Grace's voice was raw. "You want to see what loving too much looks like? Fine." She bent down, scooped up the key, and threw it at Lena's feet. It skittered across the hardwood, stopping just before the locked door. "Open it yourself. Read the letters. See the room where they died. And then tell me we're not making the same mistake." Grace's eyes glittered with tears and fury. "Tell me this thing between us isn't already suffocating. Tell me you don't feel it, the way we're becoming each other's obsession." Lena couldn't tell her that, because it was true. Grace turned and walked away, climbing the stairs to her apartment. The door upstairs slammed hard enough to shake the walls. Lena was left alone with the key at her feet and the locked door looming before her. Have you ever felt this? Comment your experience and where you're watching from. Lena didn't pick up the key immediately. She sat on the floor outside the locked door for hours, watching the silver key gleam in the moonlight streaming through the hallway window. Her back pressed against the wall, knees drawn to her chest, mind spinning with everything Grace had revealed. The house settled around her, floorboards creaking, pipes groaning, the kind of sounds that felt less like structural decay and more like memory. Like the walls themselves were breathing, holding secrets in their bones. At dawn, she heard footsteps on the stairs. Grace appeared, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her hair tangled and eyes red-rimmed. She didn't speak, just lowered herself to the floor beside Lena, their shoulders touching. They sat in silence as pale light filled the hallway. "I go in there sometimes," Grace finally said, her voice hoarse. "When the loneliness gets too heavy. I sit in their room and read their letters and pretend that kind of love is possible without destruction." "What if it is?" Lena turned to face her. What if they were just trapped? By their time, by circumstance? What if it wasn't the love that destroyed them, but the world that wouldn't let them have it? Grace's laugh was bitter. "You think we're any different? You ran here to escape something. I've been hiding in this house for years, keeping their shrine locked away like if I don't look at it, I won't become them." She touched her collarbone again, but the chain was gone. "My last relationship ended because I loved too intensely." She said I was suffocating her, that I made her my whole world, and it was terrifying. "I left my ex because I couldn't love enough," Lena admitted. "She wanted all of me, and I kept holding back, terrified of losing myself. So I lost her instead." She picked up the key, feeling its weight. "Maybe we're both running from the wrong thing." Grace looked at her then, really looked vulnerable and raw, and so beautiful it hurt. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying." Lena held out the key between them. "We open it together. We look at what they left behind. And then we decide who we want to be. Not who they were. Not what our fears tell us we'll become. But who we choose." Grace took the key, her fingers trembling. "You don't know what you're asking. I know I'm tired of running. I know I feel something with you I've never felt before, something big and terrifying and maybe destructive, but also maybe," Lena's voice caught, "maybe worth the risk." Grace stood slowly, pulling Lena up with her. They faced the door together, the key warm between Grace's palm and Lena's. "Together," Grace whispered. "Together." The lock turned with a soft click that seemed to echo through the entire house. The door swung inward, hinges groaning, and perfume wafted out, faint but unmistakable, jasmine and rose and time itself. The room was frozen in 1952. A four-poster bed with a faded quilt. A vanity with an oval mirror, lipstick tubes, and powder compacts still arranged on its surface. Photos pinned to the walls. Two women laughing, embracing, dancing in a living room somewhere. Catherine and Elena. Young and bright-eyed, and so obviously in love it radiated from the faded images. But it was the letters that drew them in. Stacks of them, tied with ribbons, scattered across the bed and desk. Grace picked up one bundle with shaking hands, untied the ribbon, and began to read aloud. "My darling Elena, every moment apart from you is agony. I wear your scarf to bed and pretend it's your arms around me. The world calls us unnatural, but loving you is the most natural thing I've ever done. I would burn the world to keep you. I would die 1,000 times if it meant one more hour in your presence. Forever yours, Catherine." Lena felt tears on her cheeks. Grace's voice had broken halfway through. The room smelled like longing and desperation and something else, something almost peaceful, as if their love had soaked into the walls and remained, waiting. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe to Sapphic Whispers and comment where you're watching from. Grace set down the letter and turned to Lena. They were standing in the space where two women had loved and died, and somehow it felt sacred. Terrifying. "Right. I'm scared," Grace whispered. "Me too." But Lena stepped closer anyway, cupping Grace's face in her hands, kissing her softly this time. Not desperate or frantic, but deliberate. Choosing. Grace melted into her, hands sliding around Lena's waist, pulling her closer. They kissed in the room of ghosts, slower now, tasting each other like prayer and promise. Grace's lips were soft, her touch reverent, and Lena felt something shift in her chest, not the terrifying rush of obsession, but something quieter, deeper. When they pulled apart, Grace rested her head on Lena's shoulder. They loved each other so much it killed them, Grace murmured against Lena's neck. Then we'll love each other differently. Lena stroked Grace's hair. We'll choose to live. Grace nodded, but her arms tightened around Lena like she was afraid she'd disappear. They stood there for a long moment, breathing each other in, before Grace moved to the vanity. 2 rings sat on the wooden surface, tarnished silver catching the morning light. They wore these, Grace said softly. Couldn't wear wedding bands, so they wore matching rings on different fingers. Secret promises. Lena came to stand beside her, looking at the rings, simple, elegant, eternal. We're not them, she said firmly. No, Grace agreed. We're not. But neither of them moved to leave the room. Not yet. Lena noticed it while Grace was examining the photos, a drawer in the vanity, slightly ajar, a corner of yellowed paper visible inside. Grace. Her voice came out strange. There's another letter. Grace turned, frowning. What? Lena pulled the drawer fully open. Inside lay a single envelope, unsealed, the paper brittle with age. The handwriting on the front was shaky, almost frantic. To whoever finds this. Grace's face went white. That wasn't there before. I've been through everything in this room 100 times. That wasn't there. But it was there now. Lena pulled out the letter with trembling hands and unfolded it. The date at the top made her stomach drop. November 15th, 1952. 1 week after the newspaper reported their deaths. Grace grabbed her arm. That's impossible. Lena read aloud, her voice shaking. I'm writing this in the dark, with what little strength I have left. They'll find us tomorrow. I made sure of it. The police will write it up as they always do, tidy and tragic and simultaneous. But I need someone to know the truth, even if that someone doesn't come for 50 years. We took the pills together, held hands, and said our vows. Promised to meet on the other side where no one could separate us. But I woke up. Catherine didn't. I held her for 3 days, waiting to follow. The pills should have taken us both, but they didn't. So, I made a choice. I couldn't let them find just her. Couldn't let them say she died alone while I lived. I couldn't live in a world without her anyway. What was left would have been survival, not life. I took more pills. Laid down beside her. Made it look like we went together, peaceful and chosen. But the truth is messy. One of us woke up. One of us had to choose to follow. And I did. I would do it again. This room holds our love, but it also holds my choice. The desperate, terrible choice to die rather than live half alive without her. If you're reading this, someone has opened our room. Someone has felt what we felt. I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse. But please, don't make my mistake. Don't love so fiercely that living without them becomes impossible. Don't build a sanctuary that becomes a tomb. Choose life. Even when it hurts. Choose life. Elena. The letter slipped from Lena's fingers. Grace stood frozen, her face a mask of horror. One of them murdered. No. No, she chose. But she woke up alone, Lena said softly. And she couldn't bear it. They didn't die together. Grace's voice rose, panicked. My whole life, I thought, the romance of it, the tragedy, but it was just, she grabbed her head with both hands. One of them woke up and chose death over life without the other. The room suddenly felt smaller. Oppressive. The perfume turned cloying, the photos on the walls less romantic and more desperate. The rings on the vanity gleamed like shackles. Grace whirled on Lena. We're not them. I know. We're not them. But Grace's eyes were wild. Aren't we? You moved here to disappear. To hide from whatever you ran from. I've been waiting in this house for years, keeping their shrine, reading their letters like a roadmap. We met 3 days ago, and I can barely breathe when you're not near me. Grace. We're already obsessed. Grace backed away, toward the vanity. This is how it starts. The intensity, the certainty. And then one day you wake up and realize you've made another person your entire world, and when they leave, because they always leave. She picked up one of the rings, holding it up to the light. They chose forever, Grace whispered. And it destroyed them. What do we choose? Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. The room pressed in around them, the weight of old love, old choices, old ghosts whispering that passion always ends in ruin. But Lena thought of Elena's final words, choose life. She crossed to Grace and gently took the ring from her shaking hand. We choose differently, Lena said firmly. She walked to the window, sealed shut for 70 years, and forced it open. Fresh air rushed in, dispelling some of the heavy perfume. Morning light flooded the room, making it look less like a shrine and more like what it was, an old bedroom that needed airing out. What are you doing? Grace asked. Letting them go. Lena turned back to her. Elena's right. We can't build our love in a tomb. We can't live in their story. She held out her hand. We have to write our own. Grace stared at her outstretched hand. What if I can't? What if I only know how to love like this? Too much, too fast, too consuming. Then we learn together. We set boundaries. We keep our own lives. We choose each other every day instead of making one desperate choice and calling it forever. Lena's voice softened. I'm terrified too. But I'd rather be terrified and alive with you than safe and empty without you. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She took Lena's hand. Together, they walked out of the room, leaving the letters and rings and ghosts behind. Grace pulled the door closed, but deliberately didn't lock it. We can come back, she said. But we don't have to live here. No, Lena agreed. We don't. They stood in the hallway, hands clasped, breathing hard like they'd run a marathon. The house seemed lighter somehow, less oppressive. Grace leaned in and kissed Lena softly. I don't know how to do this. Love without obsession. Neither do I. But we'll figure it out. Lena squeezed her hand. One day at a time. One choice at a time. Grace nodded, some of the panic leaving her eyes. They walked down the hallway together, toward the kitchen where cold tea still sat on the table from the night before, toward normal life, toward a future that wasn't written yet. Behind them, the door to the hidden room stood closed. And then, click, they both froze, turned slowly. The door was locked. Lena's hand went instinctively to her pocket. Empty. Grace patted her shirt, her jeans. Nothing. Where's the key? Lena's voice came out hoarse. I don't. I had it when we came out. I put it. Grace's breathing quickened. It was in my hand. They approached the door slowly. Lena tried the handle. Locked solid, as if it had never been opened. As if the last hour had been a dream. Grace pressed her palm flat against the wood. No. No, we made our choice. We chose to leave. From inside the room came a sound. Soft. Distinct. Unmistakable. The rustle of fabric. Footsteps on old floorboards. And then, a whisper. Too low to make out words, but the cadence was clear. Two voices. Speaking in unison. Lena felt ice flood her veins. Grace stumbled backward, her face pale as death. They're not done with us yet, Grace whispered. The door remained locked. The key was gone. And inside the hidden room, the ghosts of Catherine and Elena waited, patient, eternal, and hungry for company.